This is Keys to the Shop, Founder Friday edition. Today we're talking with Jon Allen of Onyx Coffee Lab. Well, hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you the insights, inspiration, and tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show, and thank you so much for joining me today. We have a great episode. We're talking with Jon Allen of Onyx Coffee Labs, and I'm really excited to present this to you today. Now, if you have not yet subscribed to Keys to the Shop, I would encourage you to do so. That way you will be updated every time there's a new episode, and you can stay up to date with all the great content coming out here. And also sign up for the mailing list to get transcripts of every episode, as well as extra bonus resources. Just go to keystotheshop.com and go to the contact page, sign up there for the email list. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Prima Coffee is one of the world's best specialty coffee equipment suppliers, supplying you with everything from espresso machines, grinders, brewers, to under-counter refrigeration and other commercial kitchen equipment. They have you covered all the way through what you would need for a great coffee shop. If you're looking to outfit your store with great commercial coffee equipment or upgrade the current equipment you have, Prima Coffee is the company to rely on for that. They put an enormous amount of effort into curating the best equipment from all over the world, testing it, making sure that it's the right equipment for the needs of their customers. And right now, they are running a special for Keys to the Shop listeners. When you go to prima-coffee.com/keys, you can then use the promo code HOLIDAY5. That's the word holiday and the number 5 afterwards. And that will get you 5% off your order. Now, some restrictions to that do apply, but 5% to your order is a huge discount, and it's a very generous holiday offer from Prima, and it's running until January 31st for Keys to the Shop listeners. Again, you can go to prima-coffee.com/keys and use that code when you check out to get 5% off your order. Prima Coffee just does a fantastic job in supplying awesome equipment and put a lot of effort into giving you resources to use that equipment well. And when you visit their website and reach out to them, you're going to find that to be absolutely true. So again, prima-coffee.com/keys, the website to go to. And thank you so much, Prima, for your support of Keys to the Shop. This episode is also brought to you by the amazing Barista series by Pacific Foods. This is the line of plant-based performance beverages used by the world's best coffee bars because it is designed specifically for the professional barista and the standards for excellence that they demand. So whatever you choose to use in the Barista series line, whether that's coconut, rice, soy, oat, or almond, you will be using a product that will give you an amazing silky texture. It stands up to the heat from the steaming process and creates a beverage whose focus remains on coffee. Really a tasty beverage in the end, and that's what you want for your customers who get plant-based beverages from you. And Pacific is the company to rely on to provide them with a predictably awesome experience every time. So visit their website over at pacificfoods.com. Just follow the link in the show notes. Get this product in your store. Try it out for yourself. See how your customers like it. See how your staff like it. I have a feeling you're going to be pleased with the results. And thank you so much, Pacific, for your support of Keys to the Shop. All right, so today we have a great episode in store for you. I'm really excited because I've wanted to have Onyx Coffee Lab on the show for quite a long time, and had the opportunity to sit down and chat with one of the founders, Jon Allen. He and his wife, Andrea Allen, run Onyx Coffee Lab and have for the last 7 years. And in those 7 years, they have established themselves as one of the industry's most recognizable, respected, and forward-thinking brands in coffee roasting and sourcing and in retail. They have 3 locations in Northwest Arkansas, and they are home to multiple coffee champions, whether we're talking about, of course, Andrea Allen and her fantastic championship performances in the United States Barista Championships, or we're talking about roasting champion Mark Michelson, or Brewers Cup champion Dylan Siemens. They are a few of the amazing people that work at Onyx Coffee Lab. And Onyx Coffee itself is a multiple Good Food Awards and Golden Bean winner for their roasted coffee. Their shops are essentially temples to quality and innovation that's matched with hospitality and an embrace, really, the ethos of the company of never settling for good enough. Onyx is well known for their efforts in transparency, whether that's transparency about wages amongst their staff or efforts in transparency of what they pay for their coffee. And it seems whatever they're doing, they're trying to push the envelope, but they're also simultaneously seeking to make sure that their business is absolutely caring for the people it serves, including the people that are employed by it. And this is really the approach that makes me really appreciate Onyx Coffee. They have a decidedly simple approach that does care well for those who serve locally, abroad, and in their store. And in today's conversation with Jon, we are diving into the details of how they built Onyx Coffee Lab, what's behind their decisions in their daily activities and the operations, what goes into support for an establishment of leaders amongst the company. What do people do? What are the operations like? How is it organized? How does this run? And you know, what are the hurdles that had to be overcome or are being overcome, and the most proud moments that they have along the way the past 7 years as they continue their efforts to serve their community well. There's a ton of great information in this episode. And if you wanted to find out a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes at Onyx Coffee Lab, this episode is definitely for you. Honored to have been able to talk with Jon. And if you're in Northwest Arkansas, obviously, you should be making it out to Onyx Coffee Lab and find out for yourself what it's all about. So here now is my conversation with the co-founder of Onyx Coffee Lab, Jon Allen. Well, Jon, welcome to Keys to the Shop. I'm so honored to have you on the show finally.
Hey, thank you. It's an honor for me as well.
You have been fairly busy, and you're in this beautiful new facility where you're taking the call here for the interview in your Rogers facility, your headquarters. Congratulations on that. How have things been going since launching that?
It's been going really well. It was a really long-term project for us, so it feels weird. You know, we worked on it for about 4 years, so it's kind of strange to actually be working every day in it and see it come to fruition. I'm still not quite used to it, to be honest.
You're just putting the patina on it now.
That's exactly right. But no, it's going good. People strangely like it, and staff seems stoked on it, and that's kind of the most important thing. So we all feel good. It feels like a success.
Awesome. Well, congrats again. And you know, I don't think an understatement to say that Onyx brand over the last 7 years or so has come to be recognized as one of the world's most progressive brands. I'd say is definitely got an international reputation, and you all are just great examples of quality and mindfulness, thoughtfulness in what you do. And this journey, it's hard to believe, given what I think so many people know about Onyx, that you've only been doing it for 7 years.
Right.
It seems like a lot longer, but I want to take a step back and start with your beginnings before Onyx and how you all ended up in the coffee world to begin with. What were your backgrounds and how did this coffee world come to be for you?
Yeah, so I'll kind of answer for myself and Andrea, I guess, while she's out doing other things. But we both kind of grew up working in some local cafes here. Through high school. So we were kind of introduced to coffee. We were both baristas at a local store here called Arcega's that still runs today, and it's run by great people. And that's how we sort of cut our teeth. But, we weren't totally bought into coffee at the time. It was more of a job you have in high school. And she actually ended up managing most of their shops while she was going to college. But yeah, just normal baristas, kind of finding our way through what we wanted to do. Nice. And we really weren't major coffee fans at the time, being honest. It was just a job.
That's really interesting. So you both had the experience of being baristas at Arcega's, and I might have told you at one point Arcega's was sort of the coffee shop, the Greg Street store, I believe your first store actually,
Yeah,
was where I started to fall in love with coffee when I was in a ministry school out there way back in 97, 90, 98. But
that's crazy.
yeah, it is. It's pretty cool. And when you were baristas there and it was just kind of a job for you, at what point did this become a sort of a, hey, we should kind of start roasting, start our own coffee shop? When did it become
Right.
more than a job for you and a career prospect?
So, I was going to play music for the rest of my life. That was my goal. I wasn't very good at it, but I didn't know that. And as all musicians assume that they're the greatest. And so Andrea was getting her master's in creative writing. She was going to be a writer. And I toured for about 7 years and was on the road about 8 months out of the year. So really, it was not a thing. She was managing that shop you were talking about while she was going to school, and really, while I was on the road, we kind of had the opportunity where the Arcegas had decided that they maybe wanted to sell a cafe, and we thought, that sounds like, we already know how to run it. Music's not going to last forever. Maybe this is a good financial opportunity, and so that was actually how we got into the business before we liked coffee, to be honest. I mean, we liked coffee, we liked the community, we liked the people and the culture and everything that, like, I would say a normal customer likes about a cafe, but I wasn't sold out on it necessarily. Really, we purchased that shop and I went back out on the road, and she was managing the shop while finishing a degree. And that was sort of, we were in the coffee business, but not really interested in it.
So you're thinking about, or you purchase a cafe. You start a cafe because it's a good financial opportunity. You think it's more stability for you two, and you're not quite into coffee yet. So it seems like, I'm just guessing here, that as you operated the cafe, you began to view it as more than just a good financial opportunity, and it became a little bit more personal for you all. Is that a good assessment?
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, really, it became something where I was kind of ready to stop touring, and Andrea had just finished her degree, and we are sort of all or nothing people, and we sort of just sat down and said, okay, man, if we're gonna do this, let's do it right. And so really, just pretty much then the week after we decided that, I called Diedrich up in Sandpoint, said, hey, I see you're teaching roasting classes. Can I come down and stay for a while? And I flew to Idaho like 3 weeks later and started training to roasting, because we just kind of all or nothing mentality, sort of, for better or worse, encompasses our life. Okay. Usually in a negative way, if I was being honest, but it just kind of is a thing for us. And so studied roasting about a 12 kilo and came back and started kind of a private label roasting company a couple months after we decided to really commit.
Okay, so it's like toll roasting, and that was Anonymous Coffee Roasters?
That's right. Yeah, Anonymous Coffee Roasters. We think we're very clever about that, and and we still run that today. It's a big part of what Onyx does. It keeps us honest. Anonymous is our QC, which I can talk about a little bit later. But yeah, ran Anonymous for 4 years before Onyx, and then was sort of ready to move into specialty a bit more, or not a bit more, ready to fully commit and ready to kind of operate our own brand at that point. But there was 2 or 3 years of really, what do we like about the industry? What do we not? What do we like about cafes? What do we not? And really this kind of systematic of, I don't know, since we had grown up as baristas and most of the staff was they're our age or a little bit older, to be honest, we just kind of like really pieced together everything we could think of that was either right or wrong in our minds in the industry. Obviously we didn't know everything. And that's how Onyx came about.
Okay, and so those values sort of were the purpose is to infuse your roasting operation with them, and then where does the cafe come into the picture? Was that also an operation while you were doing this roasting, or did that come afterwards?
It was. So yeah, it was kind of weird. So we were running at that point 3 Arcegas cafes while roasting at Anonymous, but couldn't roast for ourselves because of branding. And honestly, we knew nothing about business and signed a bunch of things we probably should have. And yeah, we kind of like went through that learning curve and then decided once we were ready, we rebranded one of the cafes as a test, sold one of the others, and then the next year rebranded the second one and just hit the ground running.
Okay, so they were run as Arcegas to begin with, and so you didn't do what a lot of people do, which is just to turn around and make it their own brand right away. I imagine that sort of did that kind of fuel your desire to rebrand it? It just running it for so long as somebody else's brand. Do you feel kind of held back by that?
A little bit held back creatively, I think. But, one, I mean, we had a lot of respect for them. And so we didn't want to necessarily do something premature and sort of ruin those locations. They had been cafes for a very long time. We were really close with the staff and the customer base. And so it was a little bit scary to kind of like, rip the tablecloth off, so to speak.
Huh.
So, so it was a good 4-year process of really making sure we thought things were going to be right and that it felt like the right time. I think we had to kind of mature as people and, physically just in the industry itself. I was probably a really terrible roaster for a long time. And, we needed to, I did not want to just start an operation with subpar coffee and learn as I go and sort of build a reputation from there. I really wanted to stay roasting for 3 or 4 years and learn and fail, a bunch of times and then start when we felt like things were right. So
that's really great. Getting used to the idea of being an owner of a business and running the operations of your roasting in the cafes. I'm sure if you had decided to sort of go even quicker and become Onyx right away, you might not be where you are today.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. It's just there's such different worlds, production roasting and cafes. I feel like are such vastly different businesses that it's hard. When I see cafes and roasteries open at the same time from a brand new concept, I always get worried, when we're consulting or helping someone with it, because we do a lot of that now. I always, in theory, try to have someone start with one and then add the other later on, and that usually fails. But that's always kind of our advice, because I feel like they are so vastly different.
What would you prefer they start, or does it just depend?
It really depends. I think, where you're at and what your skill set is. For me, Andrea should probably be on the show because she's so hospitality focused that like it would make sense for her to start a cafe and go. Whereas for me, the roastery made more sense, and that has sort of played out in our lives as we have a very when your business partner is also your life partner. It's important to have pretty clear lines of delineation, and so that has played out in our lives where, the cafes operationally, people all fall under Andrea, and creative and coffee just fall on my plate, and we seem to work that out all right. So I don't know, maybe I'm putting myself in other people's business plans when I say to start with one, but it has always felt like such two different businesses that it always worries me to jump into both at the same time.
Well, that's pretty wise. Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of lessons you learn from experience that you really just can't, by even just listening to, a podcast or reading a lot of books or going to classes. You just have to be in it to kind of get familiar and become a different person, or build the capacity to actually handle the things that the business is going to throw at you when it starts to grow. And I love that you all had these clear lines of delineation between you two, because a lot of people, especially in that position of having a spouse be a business partner as well, every day is like a business meeting, and everyone's business is everyone's business. And that is a recipe for trouble for sure. What you talked about some values that you both had tried to nail down in terms of what you wanted to do when you started the company. Just from what you've seen in the industry, things that you liked and things you didn't like. I wonder if you could get a little deeper on that and tell us what were those values and what are the things that you tried to put into action with Onyx that you kind of wanted to, make a difference with, or the things you liked and wanted to actualize.
I think, there's probably a lot of people would give the same answer to start with, but for us, quality and sort of kindness were sort of the two main things we were like solely focused on all the time. Because I think we had worked every job sort of within coffee by the time we were starting Onyx. That gave us sort of an appreciation for every part of the coffee chain. And so it was making sure that not that just people felt valued, because I think that can be done in a lot of ways, but that they felt valued and responsible enough that like they were going to, that quality aspect, that bar that we wanted to set, in theory, the highest that we could do would be fulfilled by each individual, which is a hard thing to do, because to get someone to buy into your business and then make it feel like their own is difficult. And we really wanted people to feel like this was part of their business, because that's how we thought we would get the most quality and sort of family out of them, not just like random TED Talks and job benefits and whatever gets people like excited about doing something right, but to feel true ownership. And so we thought a lot about what would need to be in place to make that happen. Mm-hmm. And that has been good. I think that our core staff we started with, most of them work for us today, which is, is my, biggest pride in all the Onyx things, is like that, the people we started with are all either still baristas or have moved on to some other roles, not necessarily more important roles, as we want to keep that playing field, but that fit their skill set a little more, and or have left and gone on to start their own cafes, which I think is always such a great testament to like a company.
What does that look like, though? You mentioned that you wanted to make sure things were in place that would produce that result. What tangible things did you put in place that kept you and Andrea and the other people that were sort of in authority, honest and focused on creating or curating that culture that produces this result?
Yeah, I think it's a daily, at least starting out, it was a daily of sharing the vision, like, every day with staff about that we could do something fantastic. And I also think we had a bit of a, I'm jumping ship a little bit, but we had a sort of us against the world mentality when we started. We started Onyx, and, I wanted to get into obviously roasting for other people, as I had an anonymous, but with high-end specialty and with our brand. And I would say the first 2 years probably that we would send out samples, like we wouldn't get no feedback. No one would even cup it. They would see where it's from. I'd have to explain that Arkansas is a state in the United States, that kind of thing. And so, or that like specialty coffee couldn't be done here or in the South or the Midwest or whatever. We're like, Arkansas is kind of this funny thing. We're like, we're rejected by the South because we're not Southern enough, but we're rejected by the Midwest because we're not Midwest enough. So whatever we are, was not going to produce high-end specialty coffee. And so that mentality, for good or bad, was sort of set an edge with us and our staff, I think, who at that time had probably had ownership and felt ownership within the company, and also wanted to, make a name for themselves and, help us build this kind of vision that we're all creating together. I know that's a lot of generic terms, but that's really kind of what happened.
Is this when you're kind of, I guess it's a mantra, never settle for good enough? It seems to speak to that a little bit. When did that come into play? Was that?
That's like one of those. Yeah, that's one of those awful like self-fulfilling prophecies or something. Like never could we come up with a worse mantra, because now there are certain things where you're just like I have it used against me weekly by staff, which maybe is good because you literally can't cut a corner when that's printed on everything. So, you know, but yeah, I think that is where that mentality. And I mean, we are unashamedly, like both Andrea and I are competitive by nature. We wanted to be, you know, you take that little man complex plus a little bit of competitiveness and a desire to set the bar as high as possible, and that's what ends up happening. You know, I'm not saying that we've actually achieved it yet, but that's at least like a constant goal of ours.
Well, just the little things that you do, just kind of touching on what you had just spoken about, having the idea to go beyond what might be necessary to most people or enough for most people in management positions to, you know, go through the perfunctory, you know, rituals of management and meetings and things like that, and hope that at the other end of the equation they get a loyal staff or people who have ownership, quote unquote, in the business. It seems like you just felt a need to take it beyond that, but, you know, to stay curious about what that would look like, and that it wasn't so much a formula but sort of a way of being. And it seems like that's true for your coffee as well. How did that never settling, or just the idea of going out there and trying to achieve higher degrees of quality in these areas, what did that look like when it came to your roasting and your sourcing? Because you had mentioned that Anonymous was kind of the QC, and then you wanted to branch into specialty, and now, of course, we look at your Rogers facility and all the equipment and the training and the QC that goes on there for the quality of coffee we get from you. And it's more than I'd say most people are doing for roasted coffee. How did that transpire? What were the first steps to sort of say, now we're going to scale up the roasting and apply this mantra to it?
I mean, it probably got better when we hired Mark to start roasting for us. You know, I was roasting, and to be honest, I'm not a good roaster. I'm actually pretty terrible, I think. You know, roasting is very meticulous, and I think it's boring personally. I think it's one of the worst. I think it's probably the worst job in coffee, if I was being honest. There's something very ironic to me that we as an industry have sort of like set this idea that's like you're a barista, and then if you're a really good barista, maybe you're like a trainer and then a manager, and then you go into roasting. And I'm like, gosh, that seems like such a downgrade to like this weird positions that we've created in a hierarchy. But yeah, Mark was a customer watching me roast all the time when we used to roast in a cafe, and I felt like quickly there was an understanding that he was going to be a better roaster than I was. He was unbelievably meticulous and patient, and didn't have ADD, and wanted to do the same. I just noticed he did the same thing every day sitting at the bar. And I was like, this guy would be you know, you want someone that's so routine oriented, that cares about the little things, and that's who he was. So yeah, he interned for a little bit, and I quickly turned the reins over to him and started on the sourcing side. And I guess the same mentality with sourcing. It was pretty tough actually to buy, you know, the first 2 or 3 years of like going, you know, to origin to buy coffee or talking even with importers or exporters was mostly me convincing other people to sell coffee to us.
Really?
You know, that honestly is strange that only changed like maybe 2 years ago.
Wow.
I would say that.
Is that a size thing? Like your roastery wasn't producing, like roasting enough pounds per week, or?
Yeah, a bit of a size. Some just like not in the right area, or certain producers wanted coffee. You know, it started obviously as size, I think. I mean, mainly, you know, even 7 years ago, there was a lot less micro roasters, even though it's not that long ago. A lot of importers would not sell to us, and we would talk a lot of producers into selling us coffee by essentially adding sort of outrageous premiums at the time. And yeah, it was kind of a real struggle, but we knew, you know, what we were kind of on the right track. And I think we had a long-term vision of what we wanted to happen with sourcing, and that would end up being the real foundation of what we're doing.
What was the long-term vision?
It was essentially to, find the best coffees in the world and sort of like make a change in the industry a bit. I mean, from the beginning, I think when we talk about the planning stages of starting Onyx, there was a lot of frustrations that we had within the industry that, have formed themselves out in different ways over the years. But one was the way we got green coffee it was just so damn hard and felt like we were constantly having to talk people into selling us coffee. It was which maybe sounds like a strange concept now, but that was a real struggle for the first 4 years of Anonymous and really the first 4 years of Onyx.
Yeah, it does sound rather strange. And I wonder, is the reputation now that you have as a fairly international brand, I'd say, and you distribute coffee to so many people in your wholesale program and just over the mail, and it seems like that part of your business is something that for a lot of other people too is democratizing the availability of these coffees. Is how you distributed coffees and to who and where part of the reason maybe it started to become easier to get people to agree? Like, was the reputation part of that?
It definitely was part of that. Yeah. I started to see a shift maybe 3 years ago as, some producers were answering my emails right away, and, setting up trips was a little bit easier. Going out and finding some people became a little bit easier. So I don't know. It was a bit more holistic than just like a turn of a switch. So, we had grown in volume. So that was a little bit more helpful. Our budget for green coffee, had sort of been, we didn't really have one. We just sort of bought what we thought. I'm an overbuyer. Just gonna say it. And we sort of used Anonymous as this mentality that like we would buy as much good coffee for the prices that we could, and if it showed up and it was bad, we would try to sell it as private label and break even on it through Anonymous. And so it started as just essentially, both reputationally and just paying more for green than most people would do to try to convince them to sell to us. That really hasn't changed a whole lot outside of now. It's easier to get them on WhatsApp. I make fun of Dakota. Dakota's our newest, like, he's helping me with green buying because I'm old and I can't travel 6 months out of the year like I used to. And I make fun of him all the time because it's like, I feel like it's so easy. He just like calls a producer and they answer, and then they sell him like their nicest coffee. And I'm like, you don't understand how hard this used to be. Like, I sound like that old guy that's like back in my day.
Oh man, embrace it. It's so much fun.
That's right. Yeah, it's really bad.
So now you are kind of in the history of Onyx, you're sort of at your stride where you've got some more traction with suppliers of green coffee. You've rebranded these Arcega's cafes into Onyx. And on the roasting end of things, you've got Mark, who, if nobody knows, like Mark was a guest on this show in the past. I'll link to this in the show notes. It definitely vouches for what you're talking about in terms of trying to scare people away from roasting and how hard it is and how you have to be like super built for it as a person, mentally. And yeah, so you've got this part of your business, but then you've got the cafes where all of these coffees are on display to the public, and you've got cafe staff as well that you need to manage, which there's more people in the cafes than in the roastery. So it's like way more complicated to maintain the culture and care for the people caring for the cafes. How did you go about setting in place systems to be able to both care for the coffee in the shop and the people brewing the coffee in the shop?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think probably because we had sort of clear roles, and I'm talking about Andrea and I, the care in the shop was mainly all Andrea. So probably the real answer is we just both worked 100 hours a week for the first 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
That would be like the real answer. But Andrea's incredibly gifted at being both firm and caring at the same time, like no one I've ever seen before. When we first had our cafe, I think I probably had like some complex and I'm trying to be machismo. And I'm like, we had a problem barista and I was like, oh, I'm going to fire her and I'll take care of it. And like all the hard stuff that I don't know, that no one's trained for because I obviously don't have a business degree or had never been really into that in it. And it went terribly, just like as bad as it could go. Right. And I feel awful and I'm sure she feels awful. And then it happens again like a few months later and Andrea lets the person go and they're like hugging and crying with each other at the end.
Oh my
and they
God.
have lunch. They have like lunch the next day. And it was like very apparent that it was like to admit to yourself, like, this is not like, this is never going to be your strength, And I've just seen that grown in her over time to where she is sort of this like mother. This sounds bad, but like this mother figure to the staff. And it's real. It's not, it's not something put on. People, I guess business owners that are listening to this would understand, but like, when you really care about your staff, I mean, I feel like every business owner says that, but like, they don't really see when you go home. And I see the like, the lament in her and like the things that really upset her based on what has happened in someone's life. It's real. And I think that authenticity is very hard to fake. I don't know that you can train it. And I think you can put protocols in place and you can have management classes and leadership classes and these things, but I don't know that you can fake it in the way she does it. And so I really think it's a hands-on, just relationship, person-to-person approach of pushing quality, but also pushing quality life, so to speak, with these people. And I think she has always had that holistic approach. As far as like other things that I think have gained trust of staff, we have always done things like we have published our salaries to the staff pretty much every year
That's
on
huge.
our own communication thing so that they kind of have an understanding of like, yes, yes, we're growing, the business is doing well, but like we're putting this back into coffee. We are both maybe, I think Andrea is like the 6th highest paid person at Onyx. I'm like the 9th.
Okay.
Those are the kind of things that I think have earned respect more than just words. I'm not like saying we're a martyr, right? Like we're going to own the business one day. Let's just be real. And it'll probably be out of debt. And so there's all sorts of equity and other things that happen. So I'm not claiming that either, but there are things that we can do and also that we put in place by lifestyle choices that we are committed to. I don't even like the word fair, but we're hoping we're doing things right. We're struggling blindly thinking that we're doing things right of how we wished that our bosses when we were younger would have done things right. And so far it's worked. That's all I can say. There's no research to back it up or anything else other than, I would put that mostly on her, that culture has always been a real emphasis, quality and culture. It's always the real emphasis on pretty much everything we do.
So you're really thoughtful and always paying attention to the quality of the coffee on the bar and the people and how they're feeling and how their energy is. And of course, it makes sense that you would have procedures in place and policies in place that would enhance the quality of life for your staff. What would you say? What are some of the systems or policies and things that baristas benefit from that helps to actualize that care? Because it's one thing for me to say to you, like, I really care about you, and
right.
I'm broken about your brokenness, etc. But when it comes to what I do every day and whether I have the tools I need or the support I need in communication, things like that, what kind of things do you have in place to make sure that those tangibles are there?
Well, I think, from what I've seen and what seems like the most valuable outside of just normal work culture, is there has been a real emphasis on sort of like upward mobility. I know that from our own experience, once you decided you wanted to work in coffee, especially in our area, there was kind of a lot of limited opportunity of what you could do. And so, encouraging people to stay with coffee, creating jobs for it, or encouraging them to start their own business and providing seed money for that or things like that. All of those things have kind of taken place, and we hope that that kind of like shows people that there's a longevity in it, that it doesn't have to just be a transfer job, so to speak. I don't know if that answers your question as far as like the policies in place, because to be honest, I'm just not the right person to talk about.
No, that makes sense.
I don't enforce any of them or write them, but I think from a larger perspective, that would be that's sort of the goal there.
Mm-hmm. Right. So when you think about the kind of example you want to give to your staff as leaders, is this the type of thing that you expect from people who you delegate into leadership, managers, heads of departments, things like that? When you are discussing, yeah, we're going to bring this person on, we're going to give them a salary, et cetera,
Right.
what are those discussions like, and what are the metrics that you use to judge whether or not somebody is going to be a good fit for a position of authority within Onyx?
Sure. Yeah, I think we're still learning that now. I mean, our biggest mistakes were, I think, originally taking the most talented coffee people and putting those into leader positions immediately instead of maybe the most personal or someone that's much better with people. And so that was something that was hard for us to learn. When you just kind of, for us, we just assume like, oh, they're the best baristas, like they should probably become the assistant manager, then become the manager. And it turns out that maybe like extraction theory is not like the best measure for scheduling. So that was definitely like a learning curve for us. I think now Andrea still sort of like puts those people in place based on how she sees they are performing in the cafe and how they relate with people and what their customer service and things are like. But we try to make sure that they do have a lot of ownership within that position. I think that's pretty important to us, because not only because we can't be there, but because we need their imprint sort of on the cafe or the business. Each cafe we have is not very cookie cutter. They have different menus and different concepts and different equipment and all these things. And it's really important that is shown in every aspect at the cafe that represents sort of like that community as well. And that has to happen from a leadership standpoint, to have some real authority, I guess, not just a mouthpiece for us, but some creative control behind it too. And she's been good at finding who those people kind of are that can take the reins and do it themselves. So we've definitely failed a lot in that aspect of like putting people in places that probably should not have been there to start with, but we're starting to get to that point where I think we sort of have a better understanding of what that type of person is in a leadership role. But the expectations can't be the same as for us. I think that's a mistake. I would say that, and it's maybe a good sign of the culture, but I hear Andrea talk to our Bentonville manager all the time. It's like, hey, you have to turn your phone off. Like, you can't work. You have to turn your phone off. You have to go get rest. Like all these kind of things, because it can become so overwhelming. And we always have the fallback that like, we own this, right? Like I do think that's a difference, so that we do answer that phone, because there's just a slightly different level of care. So I don't think it's fair to put the expectations of ownership on any type of management staff, really.
Right.
Making clear understanding of what is expected of people is always super important, but also where the line is drawn as well. Otherwise, they just burn out so fast, and coffee culture is so tough.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of emotional labor.
Yes, it's really hard, and if you want to keep the right people, I think you have to really tiptoe around that.
I'm sure that it has been tough to hold yourself accountable to putting the right people in place, only because so much of what drives putting quote unquote wrong people, good wrong people, but
Right.
maybe the wrong person in a position, is desperation to fill a position. And I wonder, it must be that there have been times where you don't have the right person and you have to suffice without the right person, or maybe even without that position being filled. I mean, what does that look like to sort of hold yourself accountable when you could put somebody, like put a body in that role, but you're waiting for the right person. That tension that a lot of owners feel.
Yeah, it's really tough. I think it just has to happen, or the quality drops and the culture drops. I mean, that, changing out leadership roles all the time, I think is really bad for the cafe. And usually if we have not found the right person and there's a new project to do, then Andrea will take over that store manager role until it's filled with the right person. And that has pretty much happened at every cafe at one point or another. It also just limits our growth. I mean, we're in like the golden age of cafes. I mean, probably 2 calls a week we get of opening a new cafe.
Oh, wow.
Maybe 3. And everyone wants, a hip cafe to, use every buzzword you want to use, disrupt the industry, start a connection, the like stuff that I hate. But every developer wants a cafe as an amenity to their large scale thing. And so, we are in kind of a golden age of coffee. We get, free rent for life thrown around a lot. I think governing our growth has probably been the most difficult thing we've had to do, but has also been, we're pretty proud of, because there's so much opportunity right now, and because I love change and doing new things. So my inclination is always to just say yes and have fun to start designing and building a new cafe or whatever. And I think upon reflection, we're now three cafes strong. We could easily be 5 or 6 times that size.
Right.
But I think we'd be an utter failure if we did it.
Well,
I don't think it would work.
You've got so much of your energies now, and the lessons that you learn and the culture is so concentrated in these 3 cafes. They're benefiting from that patient waiting for the right time to expand. And it seems like a lot of people expand way too fast. And I've always said that some of these cafes models that expand so fast, they are very beautiful, but they lack soul.
Right. No, I think that's true. And I just think there's some real peace to like governing your growth too. I mean, I don't, we're sort of like going through it right now of like, how much enough is enough? Like, should we even grow roasting? Should we just not take on more wholesale clients? Are we good with what we have? And that's a really hard question to answer, especially as your staff grows up. I mean, I think about me personally, and Andrea we're probably okay like where we're at right now. Like, we could just do this and stop, work every day. We like coffee. This isn't build a good book of business and then sell it to Jab for however much money, or Revelator, or whoever's coming to try to buy your cafe at the time. We like what we like coffee, and we're coffee people, so we'll always be here, but we don't necessarily have to grow. But what ends up happening is that, Dylan, our trainer, who's been with us for 7 years, is, going to get married one day and have kids. And like, those are the things that we think about that stress us out, that we're like, oh my gosh, we need another cafe because like Dylan's going to need to make more money one day.
Right.
And Mark has 3 kids, and I can't convince him to like not have a 4th or whatever it is. Those kind of things you start thinking about, and that's what causes growth. And I think that's a healthy cause of growth, because it's like growing for the right reasons, because to be honest, I'm pretty comfortable, and I would rather not add another 20 employees.
Oh, yeah, geez.
So, growing in the right ways has been good for us. And that has been a really hard lesson for us to learn. Stuff. Things are not as reproducible as how people think it is. You can cookie cutter cafes, or you can grow really fast, but you're right. They lose soul, and they just lose a lot of authenticity that I don't think can be recreated, no matter what happens, because I do think that owner-driven businesses function differently than operator-run businesses.
Okay.
And physically, you cannot run, 7 or 8 concepts as an owner. There's just not enough time in the day to do it. So I just think it's impossible. I think when you start to, it might change based on what business you're in, but there becomes a tipping point where you are really making a true compromise by saying, okay, we are going to do this, call it 6th concept or 8th concept or whatever it is, to where there's now a sacrifice being made at another location, right? And when you know that you're doing that, that's when you failed because it just starts that tumble of dominoes, and like you have changed as a business when you make that decision.
Wow. That's a great way to put it. Yeah. I mean, people definitely, it's almost accepted as a part of expansion that, when we do this, like, we're not going to be as present, things are going to suffer at some of the cafes for a little bit, but that's what we need to do. So we're going to do it. It's almost a staple, but it doesn't seem worth keeping.
And we're kind of taught to always grow, right? Like that has to be like something's wrong if you're not doing more. I feel that, like, we feel those pressures all the time from either other business owners or other cafes we talk to, or the whole culture around work. To be content is very counterculture. So I'm not saying that we'll never grow, but it has to be doable.
Never settle, Jon. Never settle.
Yeah, right. There you go. Throw it in my face like everyone else. Lord.
Thinking about how these decisions are driven by the preservation of culture and the care for what has grown to continually sort of nurture it and prune it and make it more fortified and have deeper roots. When you have a brand like yours and you function in both a local and international setting, you've got basically two audiences. You've got the people like me who know about you and other people in Japan, etc., and maybe order your coffee, and you've got the wholesale accounts in far-flung destinations too that experience that extension of your brand. Those are your customers, right? Then you've got the local Northwest Arkansas customers coming to the cafe and experiencing your coffee on a very regular basis. And I wonder how you go about serving both without sort of alienating, because I know you'll push the envelope with quality, and the shops are beautiful, but to maybe a new customer to a coffee shop, they could be intimidating. What does it look like to never settle? Sorry, bringing that up, but also meet people where they are.
Right. I actually think it's quite easy. I think it's pretty, for me, that part actually is pretty easy, because we have always been focused on selling, Onyx. I don't think I mentioned it before. Onyx's market, if you were a business person and said, like, what's your demographic or what are you going after? Like, our market is the coffee industry. We were coffee people. When we started, we wanted to sell coffee to our coffee friends. And that has never really changed. So our market is the industry itself. We take a lot of pride in that. We won't reveal names, but that most of our subscription model is cafe owners and baristas and roasters, and we take a lot of pride that our people are the industry. We are we joke about it. We're the help. We talk about it a lot, that that is who we want to appeal to. And the fact that, for our cafes, that all the other customers that come in like us is great. I'm sure Andrea would have a different answer about this, but if I'm just being honest, like, that's great. I'm so glad there's like 30 yoga moms above me right now ordering lattes, and, some school boards meeting there, and a church group, and some band that's touring through is drinking coffee there. That's all fantastic and helps pay our rent. I care about that the industry is still drinking coffee here. When I want the bartenders and the chefs and the baristas and the people that work with taste, that is our litmus test. And as long as that's our true clientele, we feel like we're on the right track. So I always feel like as long as we're gaining the industry, the rest of the people will follow, because I don't think people are stupid as other people think they are. And I think that they see when, like, oh, if you work in coffee and you like Onyx, like, I'll go to Onyx. I think it's actually a pretty simple recipe. I don't know if that answers your question, but that is always that's been our goal, right? So we want to win the coffee people.
Well, it's unique, I think. Because most people would say we want to serve and it's not like you have this goal to be the antithesis of a community gathering space or something, but you focusing on the coffee industry a lot of people are like, we want the locals, we want to change consumers' minds, et cetera. But it seems
Right.
like, are you trying to go about that process of like the grand vision of like progressing coffee and changing coffee through the tastemakers and who you inspire through your brand?
Yeah, but I think you're giving us more credit than even that. I think it's just that I think we just wanted to sell coffee to our peers. I mean, for instance, like people ask our social media strategies, our branding, and it's like, well, these are the things we like. These are the dumb inside jokes that we post that end up people liking. If it's good for our staff and it's good for us and we like it, then that's typically all we need.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of that is probably luck that people have followed in those footsteps and allowed us to be successful in that way. But because of that, we probably are overconfident in it, and so we just keep moving forward in that direction. So we're not really concerned with. I mean, the tastemakers, yes, you're right. That's probably a good way to put it, but it really has to be the people in the industry, right? Like, not the guy that owns a cafe in California that lives in New York. I mean, that I'm sure that guy's nice and maybe he buys a lot of our coffee, but like he probably doesn't care about it. The people that are physically working every day with our coffee, those are the people we're concerned about and like wanting to make sure they like. And it's probably good for our brand too, because I'm getting old and I'm not that cool anymore, and it keeps it young. And we have a bit of an edge to ourselves all the time, and that drives us to change all the time, because I think baristas are like the greatest people in the world, and they always have incredible ideas, and have a real pulse on what's really happening. And that it's easy to lose that, 7-8 years in.
Well, I have a final question for you here. This has really been fascinating to sort of dive into some of the story of your brand and how you've come up in coffee. And so many people listening right now are operating cafes. They're thinking about opening a coffee shop, maybe expanding their current coffee shop. But I wonder if you could give one piece of advice to owners and operators that would really help them raise their game, pursue quality, and sort of take a page from your playbook, help their business thrive. What would you say to them that you think would be most helpful?
I think that's a good question. I mean, if it was someone already established wanting to expand some, I guess I would ask, like, why do they need more money? Why do they need to expand? And if they had a validating answer for that, then I would say to move forward carefully. But I think I would at first question, like, why are they doing it in the first place? We joke that like opening specialty cafes is like the new yacht for rich people. It's like, instead of a summer home in the Hamptons, they're going to open a cafe in San Francisco or whatever, which I probably shouldn't say because that's like a bunch of our business. So if they're listening, I thank you for buying coffee. But so I think it would be like, figure out what the right reasons are you're doing it in the first place. Otherwise, like most businesses, it won't be open in 3 years. I guess the rest would just be like being really authentic. I mean, having brutal honesty about yourself and knowing what has worked for you. Why are you already, if you have one cafe, like why is it successful, or your roastery? Because I think it's easy to think of ourselves. I can think of Onyx as a lot of different things. It doesn't make it a reality. And so being brutally honest about our success, helps drive the next project or inform you on how to do it.
Oh, that's really good.
It just brings a real authentic purpose to, why you're opening the next cafe, instead of just like, oh, it's a great neighborhood and I'm filling a gap. Right. I mean, that can work. Don't get me wrong. That's fine. But I don't think that gives a lot of staying power.
Oh, certainly. On that note, I want to make sure to kind of ask you, because it kind of fits in with your answer here, your reasons for the next project. And I want to know what's going on with Onyx. I know, 1907 Rogers has opened up, and at the beginning of this conversation, you said it's going well. One of the things I think about when I look at that facility is, I mean, I guess you could have had a warehouse facility that expanded your roasting operation, so marked it in die of heat, exhaustion.
Right. Yeah.
I just love his Instagram account pre
Oh,
Rogers.
I know. I miss it.
But
I miss it.
the idea is like, okay, you could have had that, and maybe I don't know, the finances behind it would have been cheaper, but it would have been more utilitarian. Why go all out to have this kind of a palatial, for lack of a better word, expansion to your roasting operation and your headquarters versus the more utilitarian approach?
There's probably like ego is involved. If I was being honest, I don't know. I I liked the design element of the building. I mean, the whole point, I guess, of getting everyone under one roof was if we were going to do it, the next cafe, there was becoming a disconnect between the roasting crew and the cafe crew and the bakery. We operate a bakery. We really wanted everyone under the same roof and to be as transparent as possible so that there would be this kind of growing appreciation for jobs, that cafes could come and visit and see kind of our entire operation and what we're doing every day to ensure the QC and just everything that we do. To have it all under one roof has, even, we've been open for 3 months, and there are real tangible differences in seeing a barista look to her left and watch the coffee that she's been brewing roasted, or the pastries she's made, being created, and just kind of like all the work that goes in, or our cupping table is above the bar. So Summer and myself and Dakota cupping every 18-pound batch that comes out when 15,000 pounds are roasted. I mean, there's just a lot of things happening, and that energy has been, I think, invaluable for the staff and myself, honestly, to see. And it turns out like customers like it too, which is fantastic. But so that was, the purpose of putting everything in under one roof, and kind of the goal of the project was this sort of like transparency to all the work that goes into, everything we do for both customers, but more so for the staff to also see, everything that goes in. Because there's only so many times I can preach quality and say, I mean, what roaster doesn't say we buy the best coffee and we cup every batch? And, I mean, the terms are so generic at this point that it's like, how many handcrafted things can you talk about? To a point where it's like, just show me. And we just wanted to show them in a world of a ton of, information and a bunch of preaching the coffee gospel and of quality and of everything that's out there that says they're the best. We just wanted to show it in a building, and that's kind of where this whole thing came from. So the cupping table is the most displayed number one feature in this giant building. It's held on a pedestal, and architecturally that's like totally on purpose, to sort of be the crown jewel of like, it all comes back to, the quality of the coffee and all the rhetoric that we've been preaching for the last 8 years.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to know that you've seen so much of a tangible change in how things are perceived, and just the excitement in yourself and the staff. I really want to make it out there one day.
Come hang out.
Yeah,
we're ready for you.
And come back to Arkansas and see how things have changed since 2001 when I left.
Yeah, a little bit.
Just a tad.
Little bit.
Yeah. So thank you, Jon, so much. This has really been fun to talk with you. What is next for Onyx? What are y'all working on right now?
So we are finishing up a new cafe that should be open in February.
All right.
And it's kind of a high concept cafe at a museum. It's something we've been working on for a few years. I don't know. I don't want to like unveil the whole thing, but it's sort of this.
Right.
It's like kind of half cafe, half art installation on the coffee industry itself, and sort of like, I don't know. There's a whole mix of things happening there, but so that's sort of next. Now that people don't hate us for the transparency stuff, everyone seems on board. We're going to keep kind of growing that side of things, and right. We get a lot less angry emails than we used to about it, so that's fantastic. I don't know. We just kind of like see where that takes us, but
yeah, we didn't really talk about that too much here, but I'll link to some articles and etc. that have been covered about your transparency efforts.
I'll just forward you about 5,000 emails from the industry and how terrible people we are. I could do that if that would help.
So that's awesome. Can't wait to see that come about. So that's really cool. And where can we just keep in touch with Onyx? Where are the best places to go to stay in tune?
So you can go to our website, onyxcoffeelab.com, which we are working on kind of a new website, but it should remain the same for the next couple months. And then, our normal social media stuff. But really, you should just come here. So if people are wanting to keep in touch, they should come hang out. 1907, we hope, is a haven for coffee professionals, importers, baristas, producers, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what they should do. If they don't do that, they can get on their phone and do something, but they should just come here.
Right on.
Come cup with us. Yeah.
Jon, thank you so much again. Appreciate all you've shared, your insights, and the work you do, you and Andrea do at Onyx. Thank you again.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, one of the things that I take away from this conversation with Jon is an inspiration by the desire to serve others well and make decisions with how we use our resources to care for people, whether that means how the work is divided amongst the people tasked with running the business, from baristas up to managers and owners, or how they divide their time on projects and what the money goes to in the company. All of these decisions affect, in the end, how people are cared for, the customers, the farmers, the employees, and the community of coffee at large also. So this kind of view of decision-making is one that you can tell they live by. And I hope that you can find a way to apply this kind of philosophy to the way that you run your business or your future business. And I hope that Onyx can be an example to future owners and inspire us to live as examples to benefit, future owners ourselves. If you currently are operating a coffee shop, it's a great time to be able to focus on how well you're caring for those who are in your employ, your customers, and the people who rely on your business, your suppliers. And that's going to set up the future generations for success. And we can keep this thing going long into the future. And of course, legacy being a subject of one of Andrea Allen's past presentations. And I think I can find that and link to that in the show notes as well. But Onyx Coffee, holding it down for the progress of specialty coffee and just simply trying to run a good company through and through. So thank you so much to Jon for joining me on the show. I appreciate your time and your wisdom. And if you want to find out more information about Onyx Coffee Lab, you can go to their website over at onyxcoffeelab.com. And there you can buy coffee, find out more about their story, inquire about wholesale, etc. Of course, you could also be following them on Instagram as well. That's just over at Onyx Coffee Lab. Now, again, if you want the transcript for this episode, you can go to keystotheshop.com, and on the contact page, you will find a place to send your information, and you'll be signed up to receive that email. And in there, you're going to find the resources, extra resources. You'll find the transcript from this episode, and also some bonus audio from Jon Allen in the newsletter this time around. So if you want to reach out to me, that contact page is a great way to do it. You're simply emailing chris@keystotheshop.com. If you have questions or comments and things like that, if you want to send Keys to the Shop suggestions for future guests or topics, chris@keystotheshop.com. Also, if you're interested in working with Keys to the Shop consulting and training, whether that's training for your staff or coaching for yourself over the phone or in-person visits to your coffee shop for assessments on your operations and your quality, this is all stuff that is offered by Keys to the Shop Consulting. Again, that's chris@keystotheshop.com. And with that, that is the end of our show today. Thank you so much for joining me on this Founder Friday episode. I appreciate every single one of you. Stay tuned next week as we talk with Jeffrey Champeau of Rishi Tea for a tea primer episode. This is going to be a really fascinating episode about tea that we all need to hear in coffee. So that's next week on Keys to the Shop. And have an awesome day. Thank you very much. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.